Slavery itself isn't abolished in the British Islands until 1833. And indeed, there are still Africans carried across the Atlantic to Cuba and Brazil, illicitly, another more than 1 million. And slavery doesn't end in America till the Civil War, it doesn't end in Cuba and Brazil till 1888.
The sad truth of many situations like this, where there's a huge change on paper, a huge change on paper doesn't change people's material conditions of life. Because what happened was British slaves finally became officially free, August 1st, 1838, but for almost all of them, there was no work available except continuing to cut sugarcane. And now they suddenly found themselves having to pay rent to the planters for the miserable huts that they lived in, and taxes to the government.
And there were also all kinds of other strategies used essentially to prevent former slaves from gaining access to land, to prevent them from gaining access to the cities, to prevent them from gaining access to the professions and so forth. So there were all kinds of other strategies, all of them really largely tied together by a broader racial order that also kind of sustained a certain kind of subordination without slavery.
Many of the abolitionists could see that it was unjust and it was cruel to perpetuate a system where people were enslaved and degraded. But that did not necessarily mean that they saw those people who were degraded and enslaved as civilized like them. So there is a disconnect. And it's a disconnect that has to be marked and given some significance, because historically we often think that abolitionism was like an anti-racist movement. It wasn't an anti-racist movement. You know, Britain moved out of slavery straight into a wider and deeper colonial empire.
I think it's important that the British try and temper their sense of themselves and the sense of their past with an awareness that their history is not all drums and trumpetry. It's not all the kind of glories. It comes with a kind of a rather dark stain to it, a rather dark side to it. What's Rule Britannia about? Written in the 1740s when Britain did rule the waves, but in the 1740s the British are carrying 40,000 Africans a year across the Atlantic. Never will be slaves. Britain never will be slaves.
Of course, the end of slavery opened up all kinds of possibilities for contestation that simply were not there before. So I think the change was crucial, and ex-slaves mobilized political institutions, legal institutions, religious institutions, and were able to do so and kind of push forward. But it is striking, I think, that in a sense the struggle to really bring about a complete end or complete erasure of all the effects and legacies of slavery is still continuing in a lot of ways.